So, good evening, ladies, and welcome to the presenter series for IACT and IMDHA. We are here tonight because we are getting jazzed, for the upcoming HypnoExpo, which is here in Orlando, Florida. Look around, it's lovely here, nice and warm. And it is from May 16th through the 18th, is the weekend of the conference. And then there are pre and post conference programs like there always are the a couple of days before and a couple of days after. And it is those pre and post conference programs that have got us here with you today because we are talking to the presenters of those particular programs. So we're going to begin tonight with Jessica Hanson, and I'm sorry that I have to read this. I did look over it, and I'm like, oh my God, am I going to be able to say all that? But I am going to read it. Jessica is the recipient of IAC's 2023 Educator of the Year Award, and she's often described as an old soul because of her many experiences. She learned hypnosis at the age of 13, count them, 13 years old, and credits hypnosis for saving her life. Jessica is co-author of IAC's Trainer's Manual. By the way, I was talking about the Train the Trainer course, and there you go, a contributor to that through her assistance with me in getting that manual together. She's the owner of a state licensed hypnosis school. She is the author of 4 books and the creator of the Turtle Transformation Process. And she is Roy Hunter's chosen protege, helping to preserve and to make available Hunter's contributions to hypnosis. Her passion is helping people transform with hypnosis. And by the way, I would say for any of you who don't know, I was at the conference last year and Roy Hunter, you probably know this by now, Roy Hunter had a stroke at the conference last year. And Jessica, God bless you, was standing right there and able to step in and to cover the parts therapy program and the parts therapy train the trainer program that Roy has been preparing her to do. So we are really happy to have you with us, Jessica, and to talk to you tonight about the program. So how are you?
Hey, good, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Mhm. I'm not quite sure where to start. I mentioned some things about Roy. Maybe a good place to just sort of kick this off to make sure we're all talking that you're talking about the same thing that we're hearing about is what can you tell us about what is parts therapy?
Yeah, so parts therapy really is, this goes back way before Roy and Tebbets. It goes a long ways back, but we all have parts of ourselves. Um, they develop early in life and later in life, and it's how we navigate through the world. So I'll use myself as an example, but when I'm in the office with a client, my hypnotist part comes out. And that's what does the work with the clients the best because that's what it knows. But when I'm at home with my husband or the dog or doing things like that, a different part of me comes out, the wife, the just homemaker, whatever it is. And when I'm volunteering, I have a volunteering part which comes out. Um, Roy's example has always been, people ask, can we get new parts? Yes. And Roy always likes to say, when his first grandchild was born, his inner grandpa part developed. So sometimes later in life, these parts of us develop. I know, like Karen, she's kind of semi retired and different stuff. So she's developing a new traveling, sassy retired part.
And loving it, I might add. Thank you, Jessica.
So it's really a lifelong work inside of all of us, would be the best way that I would describe parts.
So in other words, some of us have aftermarket parts.
Yes.
It's really nice to think of it that way. And I love the idea of yeah, being able to develop parts. And can you create parts deliberately?
Yes, if needed. You certainly can. So let's say you're going to take up, I'm just going to do like ballet dancing, and you've never ballet danced before. As soon as you start, I believe, thinking of that process, a new part of you can form. And that's going to be that part of you that learns ballet from the ground up, or maybe it's a sport, or maybe it's a new skill. Maybe you're becoming a hypnotist. You got to develop a hypnotist part. Um, and it's not that you're developing a part all unto itself. We're not talking about like Ken and Barbie dolls and Skipper and like all these. A lot of our parts work interdependently with other parts as well. So you might have that inner hypnotist part that's developing, or the ballet part, or the wife part, but you can draw on knowledge from all of those parts and still have one or two executive parts working at any time.
So I'm curious, Jessica, when you're working with clients and talking to them about parts, do they ever get concerned about split personalities? Ooh, are you going to split my personality? And do I have all these different parts? How do you talk to them about that?
I've only had that a really concerned client once, and she was diagnosed with multiple personalities, so for good reason. Most clients, when I describe it to them, they are kind of excited. And we really have a lot of fun. So I just, let them know we're just going to um, talk to different parts of you. So, like, if you were to go out with your friends after lunch, I might talk to that part of you, and you would respond differently than if I were to talk to the employee part of you or the wife part. They really actually enjoy the process very much. And they're amazed at what comes out of themselves, out of their own mouth.
It it is fascinating stuff. What drew you to it?
I would have to say it was back in Daytona Beach. I just thought, well, I learned a little bit about it in my initial hypnosis training years back, and the opportunity came up to train with Roy, and I took the initial parts therapy training with him, and I just kind of fell in love with it because I saw so much potential. Not only physical, not only the parts like of our personality, but physical parts. So I've worked with clients with, let's say they have a broken finger that just never quite, it's the pain still comes into that finger and there's no medical reason why. Or I worked with one person for eye health and different stuff because they asked. And so talking to the physical body parts as well, like, hey, why are you continuing this pain when it's no longer necessary? Um, and that's what drew me in. It's like, it's so needed and so necessary. And I think it's really cool that us as hypnotists get to do this work. Um, and I really think we get to do the fun part of it. There's so many variations of parts therapy in psychology and psychiatry, but they have different ways of going about it. And it takes so long to do. And a lot of times in one session, we can bring resolution to something with this simple process.
It's really kind of a basic, right? Because so many other things cross over into it. I mean, if we're doing age regression, we're talking to a younger part of that client. If we're doing inner child work, we're having an adult part of the client give wisdom to the little part of the client, or future pacing. A part of you goes out into the future. So it really does overlap with all sorts of different kinds of techniques, does it not?
Yes, I get asked a lot, how often do you use parts therapy? I like almost every session because, like you said, a regression can lead back, or, you never know, but you're always dealing with a younger part of you because that's usually where something stems from. So it really is a foundation of hypnosis itself and hypnosis work.
Jessica, on the one hand, I think that parts therapy is a really valuable thing, but on the other hand, I'm not entirely sure about it. So in terms of where this comes from, I know that there's a lineage that goes from Charlie Tebbets to Roy Hunter to you, and I wonder just I don't know how much information you have about that. I know Roy used to sort of love to tell us about Charlie, and maybe just a little bit about its development would be kind of helpful.
Yeah. So yeah, Charlie, Roy always liked to say Charlie was a debater. he and Roy's method is a little different than Charlie's, but it's such a cute story, and you can always go back and listen to some of the other recordings of Roy explaining it in his words. But Charlie was very good at parts therapy. He would get lots of resolutions. I believe he used it very often as well with his clients. He just loved parts therapy, but he loved to let the parts debate and duke it out and fight it out within the clients. Roy, however, was not a debater. He didn't like to debate, so he just talked with the parts one on one and kind of delegated and negotiated. He was just more of a mediator. So he'd still talk to 2 or 3 different parts at the same time, but they weren't allowed to yell at each other and debate. He was just that go-between or buffer. And it works both ways. If you love debate, you can debate with parts, and I believe you can still get the same results, because you do have some clients, if they're a lawyer or they're in a certain job that debate is natural for them, you might have to be a debater to deal with their parts. I had one client where it kind of went that way because of their job. So, you always have to be ready to be flexible and step out, use the model, the 11-step process, but it's just a framework, and be able to be flexible with that framework.
Well, that's one of the things that I think is really beautiful about this is that, a lot of hypnotists, I find are continually looking for scripts. Here's my client's thing. What am I going to say? What am I going to say? I've got to get all the words right and stuff. And I tend personally to sort of favor, use the word model. I think that's a beautiful choice of words, or protocols, as and they unfold before us when we're doing the work, rather than us having any idea when it begins where it is that it's going to go, and truly open to client-centric approaches, which is, I know was really a very important thing to Roy. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I wanted to say about this is that, unlike, there are some techniques in hypnosis in the field generally, that were codified some 50 years ago by the guy who wrote the book. And and this is, and they're continually taught to do the same way, the same way that we did that long ago. Whereas, as the sort of curator of this material through the years, what I saw was Roy actually upgrading, developing, making modifications, and changing the process to sort of suit a modern audience. And I think that's really ultimately important. And so I can't thank him enough for that. And, and I'm glad that you're the lady that gets to talk to the point, because it does seem to be that kind of an open-ended, where are we going to go next? I'm just curious and I don't know what you can tell us, because a little bit is about client sessions and things like that. But I'm just curious in terms of, I wonder if you've got some sort of example or something that you can share with us, particularly what I'd be interested in, just because I think it makes for good radio, would be an example of something that was a surprise to you. You opened up the session, you had a couple of questions going on, and and then where it went. Is there anything like that you've got?
Sure.
I know I put you right on the spot. Yeah.
No, it's okay. Before I answer that, I just want to back up and just quickly add a little tail to something you had commented on, of, Roy's variations through the years. I have had the question, am I going to change anything? No, I am not. My goal is to preserve Tebbets and Hunter's work and keep this solid core together, because it is very teachable and learnable the way it is.
Mhm.
So nothing's going to change. So that being said, yes. So one session in particular that happened quite recently, actually, and it was more, not so much that I was surprised, but the client's surprise. This part emerged that was quite unsure or a little bit angry and different over a situation, and dealing with this part and talking with it, it wasn't wanting to move or negotiate too much. We talked to it, and all of a sudden, it realized that it was causing the problem, and that it wasn't a good thing. And we offered it I should have had it was so cool how it changed its name. It was from, I think it was anger, and all of a sudden anger became passion. And anger had this reason why it was now going to be passion, because um, passion could still have a very strong voice. It could be very in your face and out there. It could be very passionate about what it was doing, but it could do it in a little nicer way than being that anger and very like, instead of being the tiger, it could be more the house cat, but still have authority in the client's life. And those words came from her own mouth in the session. And because your client is always usually aware of what they're saying, especially in parts, there was a moment where she just kind of giggled and said, I can't believe I just said that. So that's one of the biggest joys, I think, of doing parts therapy, is letting the client, or helping them elicit these things from in themselves that they didn't know were there, and letting them come up with their own answers. Because, I don't want to give the wrong suggestion at the end of the day, and they already know the answer. We just have to bring it out of them. So I
That's
guess
great. To me, that's one of the criteria, by the way, for how do you know that you're doing a good job is when it doesn't go according to plan,
yeah,
that something spontaneous can happen. And that's really cool.
yeah.
Hey, Karen.
And will that be part of the training too? How to pull that story out of them, or how to ask the right questions and elicit that information?
Yes, very much. That's one thing that I'm definitely adding to the training, and it's worked well with my students. We do a lot more role playing while we're learning with the student manual, just to get people comfortable with asking those questions, because it's not a normal questioning process that you would do every day. It's a little bit different. But once you get comfortable with those basic questions, then you learn about your wiggle room in there, and they really take it and run with it after that.
So, for someone who signs up, what can they expect? I mean, will there be templates? Will there be scripts? Will there be practice? Will there be, you talked about role playing.
Yes, we will do definitely role play throughout. But so when you sign up and take the class, honestly, I wish we had more time together, more than 2 days, but it's going to be a jam-packed 2 days. You get your manual. This is just the front page from it, but you get your student manual. You get Roy's book, the purple book to go with it. Um, you are getting some hands-on training, as much time as we have, probably some, real practice sessions with each other. We're going to pick a problem and do a session and pick it apart so you get comfortable with it. I've created a Google Classroom where there's additional resources, and you're only added to that if you complete the trainings. You have to hang in for the 2 days. And on that Google Classroom, there are more resources and more history of parts, and just for your own growth and benefit, to go on there. There's also a special logo that you get to put on your website to use, that I've developed for parts therapy. And you can kind of see it on here, maybe. This is your lovely challenge coin you get as well upon completion. Two sides to that, but the logo is turned out really nice, because I want you to be able to distinguish yourself as a Tebbets Hunter parts therapy student or facilitator, um, compared to everyone else that's out there doing parts therapy. Plus, you get a certificate, beautiful certificate to frame. There's an option to have an extra certificate from IACT or IMDHA. Just contact them and work out the details with them. But you can have 2 certificates if you would like to walk away from this training. And of course, I'm there to answer your questions as much as possible. I could tell everyone I'm educator first, hypnotist second. I want you to feel solid in your skills as a parts therapy facilitator when you take this training.
Lovely.
Will 2 days worth of training do it? I mean, when they finish the 2 days worth of training, can they go home and do parts therapy with the first client they see?
Yes, they can. Now, is it good? It's going to be like riding a bicycle, but that's why I want to integrate as much hands-on and working with each other as we can in the class, because it can feel a little awkward at first learning the questions, and learning some of the don'ts, things not to do as well. But yes, ideally they can go home after 2 days or right off the conference the next day. If there's someone struggling, sit down and do a session with them. I believe that they can do it after taking this 2-day training.
Nice. One of the questions I didn't ask before, and I was thinking about it, was the broad question, the big question is, who do you use this with and when? But the maybe more trimmed down version, for example, is this something that you can use for anything from habit control to self-esteem to health related issues, for example?
I will say yes to all those. There's, of course, we'll talk about the process in class to really weed it out, but most of your clients will come in and they'll say, part of me feels this way, or they'll talk about an inner conflict or a desire, but they just can't quite reach it. Um, I've used it with a lot of my smoking cessation clients, weight release clients, and you end up there at some point doing parts therapy because the issue is rooted back there somewhere in one of those ages. So
We know it has to be part of them doesn't want to, right? Or they would have done it already.
exactly, that's why they're calling us, because there's a struggle. They can't do it on their own. So yes, that's why I say I use parts therapy with almost every single client, every single session, hands down. Even if we start with regression, we usually end up in parts therapy because I want the resolution for my client as badly as they want it. And this is
Or or start with parts therapy and end up with solution.
yes,
Is that too? I mean, it can go both ways. You don't
yeah,
have to have age regression and then parts therapy. It can
no,
it's a perfectly standalone process.
yeah. And the other thing I really love about this, and I know it's kind of Roy's passion and where he was taking parts therapy next, is the spiritual aspect of it as well. I've done many beautiful sessions where a client has an answer, and we just will talk to their higher self or the part of them most closely connected to God, or their version of higher self, and we get some beautiful, amazing answers. And it's just like tear sessions sometimes.
I don't mean to interrupt, Jessica, but I don't know if you noticed in the gallery, but you mentioned the spiritual aspect and you mentioned the sitting next to God or the godlike figure. And of course, Roy is the godlike figure of parts therapy as we know it. And look who showed up
Oh, I was hoping
at
he
that
would.
moment, as if called by a higher power. It's so good to see you, Roy.
Thank you. I don't know what happened. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, we can see you and hear you too. And
Okay, I can hear you, but I can't see you now.
well, we are almost out of time for Jessica. And Jessica, I don't mean to take any of your time, but I'm just going to ask Roy to give you a testimonial for teaching this class at IACT IMDHA. Give her a testimonial, Roy.
Hi, thank you. I am very glad that Jessica asked to be a part of me in this 2 years ago. So she's been really doing a good job. So I give you a good plug and thank you very much for all of you helping me.
Well, we love you, Roy. Thank you very much for showing up.
Yes.
I
Well,
wish I could have done a longer turn, but I've had some medical problems,
yeah.
and I wasn't even sure I could meet in there today. But I'm glad I was at least to say hi.
Yeah.
Here you are.
Well, it really is lovely to see you, Roy.
Thank you. It's it's been difficult for me for the last 9 months,
Yes.
but I appreciate your your prayers, and your concerns. Thank you.
Great. Well,
And I say hello to God, to Jen, Jenna, and Tom. Sometimes it's hard for me to say what I'm saying, and that's been really difficult for me here.
yeah.
So, good night, everyone.
Good
Lovely.
night, Roy. Thank you.
You bet.
Oh.
So,
Jessica, any final words for you?
No, I'll just say I'm so grateful Roy was able to pop on. Because I'll just, honestly, when I was there when he had the medical incident, and I know how he took over, and I said, God, not like this. I said, please let him
Yeah.
stay with us.
Thank you. It was very difficult. I couldn't even remember my own name,
Yeah.
um, the first time. I That was something that was very weird to me.
yeah.
But at least I've much better now than I used to be, but I still have a long way to go.
Yeah. Well, you're looking a
And
whole lot better than the last time I saw you, Roy. So it's thrilling to see you here.
thank you. One of the difficulty is dealing with pain every day, and that's been frustrating because I've I have to deal with that every day. I have to deal with pain.
Mm.
So we have to be thankful to our blessings.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You have our prayers, Roy.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
All right. So, Jessica, we are excited now. I want everybody to know we're going to be talking to Jessica in another couple of weeks because after this 2 days before the program, she's also offering the parts therapy trainer program, and so that's the 2 days at the end after the weekend of the conference, the Monday and Tuesday, and so we'll get to hear all about that the next time that you're on here, and it's been wonderful to have you.
Well, thank you, Michael. And it's going to be a great time. It always is. But again, you'll walk away being able to do parts therapy and really help your clients succeed and grow, um, and make you a better hypnotist at the end of the day as well.
All right. I'm in favor of that. Okay.
And we're back with Mary Beth Svatek. Now tell me that I said that correctly.
Yeah, Svatek or Svatek.
Svatek.
That's how the Bohemian part of the family says it. From
I
the
want to say it the way you say it. Svatek. Is that the way you
yes.
like it?
Mm-hmm.
Mary Beth Svatek, and she's going to be teaching a pre-conference class on all sorts of good stuff. Now, I
Yes.
read Mary Beth's bio, and Mary Beth, I hope you don't mind if I don't read it word for word. What I want to tell you is she has credentials out the wazoo. Counselor, social worker. She's got all of these mental health credentials that you just wouldn't believe. And you know what? One day she said, I think I need a little bit more. And that's when she went into hypnotherapy and made the transition and works with trauma and all sorts of great things. Mary Beth, I'm really, really intrigued by all this. Please tell us what you're going to be teaching in your pre-conference workshop.
Well, as you can see, the name of it was Healing Your Own Trauma and Helping Your Clients Heal Theirs. But I decided to do one locally, and I just wasn't getting the response. And I realized a friend of mine is a school teacher, and the first day of class, she told her kids, every single person has an A. You all have A's. You have an A, you have an A, and here's how to keep the A. And I remembered back, I wasn't a good student. And I thought we all had F's and we had to work our way up. And so I realized, so I changed the name to Teaching Your Trauma to Dance. And because I felt like saying healing your trauma when people are in trauma and they're in the whole mindset of what the culture tells them to about their trauma, then it feels like this upward climb that they may not be able to do, just like getting from an F to an A. And so now I tell them that when they come to my trainings, you already have an A because you're here. And so what if we could use our trauma and dance with it and use it as our launch pad?
Hey, I've got a book called Trance Dance. I'm all about calling it a dance. So
Yes.
yes, dance with
Yes.
it, baby. Tell us what
Yes.
you're going to do in the workshop.
Well, basically, I'm going to, we will be doing some activities. I love to do different games and role playing. The games are kind of role playing. They just don't know it though. They think they're playing a game. So that type of thing. And we'll be going over, there's so many components to trauma, even our body. So we'll be learning, how do we take what happens when we're in trauma? A lot of times we neglect our body. And so when our body is not getting what it needs, we're not eating right, whatever we're doing, what does it do? It gives us trauma symptoms. So we get the trauma symptoms and we look for something to attach it to. So the first thing we need to do is get homeostasis. So I take a mind body approach. So I'm kind of going into a little detail that I didn't plan on going into tonight, but it's basically you have to deal with the mind body spirit. That's why I got out of the traditional counseling and mental health, because we weren't dealing with that. So we will be doing that at the training.
And you also look at trauma from a cultural perspective. I understand symptomatically and body work and that kind of thing, but tell me about the cultural aspects.
Well, various cultures, we deal with things, death and different things in different ways, and we see it in different ways. And so how we view it, and sometimes there's cultural expectations on how to deal with it. So if you remember 30 years ago, 40 years ago, I think 30 years, it started to become vogue to have a therapist, 20, 30 years ago. But it used to be you didn't dare tell anyone. I mean, I went for counseling. I had hypnotherapy as a teenager too, and it was very helpful. But I didn't dare tell anyone I was in therapy. And so now it's almost like this badge of honor to have trauma and to have therapy. And so there's a cultural expectation that I think that people handle their trauma different than they did. And I'm not so sure it's a healthy different than they did 30 or 40 years ago, because we're seeing a lot of people, we're seeing more people incapacitated because of it than we did back then.
I love looking at perceptual positions, and you also talk about looking at this from the therapist perspective.
Yeah.
Cultural
Yeah.
trauma affects the therapist.
Part of it is, I think as therapists, first of all, we were always trained by the pharmaceutical industry. And it was, this is how people are going to respond. And you got to go get them and get to a doctor to get medicine and all this. And so we started expecting clients to respond in this textbook style. And instead of looking at them individually and again, taking a mind body approach. So we were throwing everyone into one box, and I was in one agency for 14 years, and we were seeing the same people coming in when I left 14 years later that we were when I went through the door. There's something wrong with that system that that we're not getting them through. We're not getting them healthy. No matter how bad they are, they can improve if we use the mind, body, spirit. And of course, for me, a big part of that is hypnotherapy.
Yeah, but remember, they have a better business model than we do, because they keep the same client coming back for 14 years. After about 3 or 4 sessions, we're looking for a new client. So you got to give props for their business model, at least.
Yes.
It may not be very effective solution oriented, but it sure is good for the pocketbook.
Yeah, and really it's, what am I in this for? Am I in here to heal, or am I in here to make money? And I would like to make money. I'm working on getting to the one-to-many model so I can do a little more. But why am I here if I don't have my clients going through and being a ton better? I'm not doing my job. But I'll tell you what, that's how I get so many referrals. I just had someone this weekend that came, and it's my fourth referral from this client that had this amazing healing through hypnotherapy. And so.
Well, Mary Beth, this next question is really kind of important to me, and I'm excited about it. It was on the list of questions that you gave us. My undergraduate degree is in linguistics, and
Okay.
I'm all about language. I just really love that. And I worked for John Grinder for a time, so the NLP
Mhm.
guy who was a linguist after all. And one of the things that John had taught us, and it made so much sense, was we have the idea that language is what we use to describe experience.
Yes.
But what he suggested was, but the truth of the matter is that language creates experience. And
Yes.
so you got a section here, you're talking about labels versus gifts,
Yes.
and labels and how they operate and affect us. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Well, what I found, and they taught us this in our textbooks, but nobody paid attention to that. That, about labeling. Once somebody gets a diagnosis, it's virtually impossible to get rid of it. And we had young men come in that would, maybe one of them saw an alien in his closet Saturday night, but never had any other issues. And immediately they'd slap a schizophrenic label on them. And then we got to do the schizophrenic protocol. And it was all kind of in these neat boxes of, bipolar's here and depression is here. And so everybody had their label. And then we just kind of, with like our schizophrenics, they went through different types of medication. But and then they perceive themselves that way. I mean, to be told that you have this disease and it's going to progressively get worse with age, which is not true. I know many who have had that diagnosis and recovered, and most of them took a different approach than the medication, or they eventually did if they didn't write that. But I think my biggest regret looking back, as I got into holistic, I was just thinking diet, nutrition, giving them the foundation. And then it opened this whole thing to energy and spirituality. And I started looking back, and I had two clients, and one, his name was Richard, and he was a famous, not famous, but in his high school, real popular basketball player. And he's the one that had the alien in his closet. And as soon, within 6 weeks after he came through and got the diagnoses and everything, he looked mentally ill. And he had all the classic, the cotton on the mouth, the swollen tongue, the dry tongue, the droopy eyes. And, but he would, it was kind of funny because it took me 3 years to get pregnant. I didn't think I could have kids. And I literally was not even 2 weeks past my cycle. And I walked past him one day and he pointed to my belly, and I was about 110 pounds and 5'7". So I know it wasn't showing. And he just walks by and says, "You're pregnant." And I'm like, "Oh, I am not, Richard. I am not." Well, lo and behold, I was. And when he'd say, "She's going to be, this is a girl, this is a girl." And one time he came up when I was really big, and we took all the clients on a picnic, and he put his hand on my belly and said, and she didn't kick or anything. And so all of a sudden he points at my belly and he said, "Baby, you kick me right now or I'll spank your butt." And me and my daughter was like, bam, 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 bam. And so we were laughing over that. And then of course I had her, and about, 14 months later, I walked by him one day and he goes, "You're pregnant." And I'm like, "No, I'm not, I'm not." And I was both times very early on, but, and everything. Well, there were other things he said through that time of working with him, that looking back, knowing what I know now, I'm like, he had a gift. And we had another guy that would come screaming in, and they're fighting downstairs and have a fit. And we had a whole protocol that we worked with the psychiatrist, because we were doing behavior management with him and behavior modification. And so we all had to do the same thing. But then we started realizing, like, okay, he said that. And then 5 minutes later, we get a call for help that there's fights downstairs. They need backup. And or he'd bust into the office and say, "You guys are talking about me," and we'd say, "Mark, no, we're not." We do the protocol, escort him outside, blah blah blah. And then one day, someone said, we were discussing his case. So we started calling him in, and we'd say, "Mark," after it was over with, after he went through and started modifying his behavior, and we'd let him back in, we'd say, "Mark, we were discussing your case. How did you know that?" And he would say, "I could hear you. I could hear you." So he was my client. So I said, "I'm taking him for a hearing test." And I took him and had his hearing checked. Now, this was a man, 53 years old, identical twin, and his brother was an RN. And but he had this issue, schizophrenia, and so they ended up doing a hearing test and finding out that his hearing was so sensitive that if you had water dripping in your bathroom, it would sound like it was, really big right next to him, and it was running. And so what they did is they just did some tones to dull his hearing, and just enough. And they said, "Mark, it might hurt." And when he left, he'd go, because he'd be so happy when we would vindicate him. And we would say, "So Mark is a good guy after all." And he'd laugh. But when they were doing that, he was laughing because he knew that he was realizing now that all this time, all those years, everybody told him, "It's your imagination, shut up," all this stuff. He was right all along. And so I feel like it's this labeling. When we label, we put people in boxes. And there's a lot of gifted people. Looking back, I mean, I hear so many things now. I have attorneys and doctors tell me they were thrown into a different timeline or reality, and they're functional people. Well, my clients told me that stuff. And what if, you can't really help them to go back if that's what they believe happened, and it's not my job to believe it, but I can help them adjust to it. And what if I had known this stuff back then and ripped off those labels back then?
Nice. It's interesting because sometimes it isn't so much that we need to be healed of diseases or conditions, but we need, in fact, to be healed of diagnoses.
Yes. Yes, because once you get it, it's very hard. And like I said, that was in our textbooks.
Mhm. Yeah.
Wasn't that what we were just talking about, though, too, Mary Beth? I mean, I have a stepson who is diagnosed schizophrenic,
Mhm.
has been for over 20 years. He has to see a psychiatrist to get his
Mhm.
meds renewed. And if he had not been placed on meds to begin with, had he been worked with in a way
Yes.
that Bandler worked with schizophrenics,
Hmm.
his life could have been very different.
Yes. And how many of them may be gifted? How many of them
He's
might be
very
able
gifted.
to?
He is a very gifted human being.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't know, I do believe that the human body is capable of so much more. So how many times, how much of this could be spiritual gifts? I mean, like Richard knowing I was pregnant, how do you know that? And so I just think that looking back, there's a lot of things these guys told us that we've had predictions. We've had them tell us, "Oh, the Twin Towers are going to get hit. The Twin Towers are going to get hit," like a week before they happen. There was a client telling people that, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's just schizophrenic," and then it happened. So, I think I wish I would have been more open minded. And, of course, I believe in diet. If you're low in zinc, you can hallucinate, or you can have hives. Different people respond differently. And I don't think we get to the bottom of some of the stuff here that could be based in physiology either. So, there again, mind, body, spirit.
Nice. So, Mary Beth, we're down to like 7 minutes, and so I want
Okay.
to make sure you get a chance to be able to say this. For people that are considering your workshop, what can you tell us in terms of what's actually going to happen in the room? That is, How is the training going to be? And what will they be able to do when they leave?
Well, I'd love to do interactive trainings. I like them to participate, and I want them to have their own aha moments. I give them a 16-week coaching program that does deal with mind, body, spirit. It deals with the physical first. It deals with the spiritual. It takes a little bit of my energy model therapeutic change and puts it in there enough to really help be able to help with the trauma. And so it's a 16-week coaching program, and they'll have access to me during that time as well. For 16 weeks, they'll have access if they have questions or things. And we'll be doing. I'm offering them to certify with, if they want to do an IMDHA, to contact IMDHA with that as well. So, and again, group activities, interactive. I want it, it'll be more hands-on. I might even bring a dance teacher. No, I'm just kidding.
Define trauma for me.
Trauma to me is and I have it in my trainings really up there, much more succinct than what I'm going to tell you, but it's an event in our life that kind of throws our equilibrium off. It's a negative experience that just it throws our balance off. Maybe it's something that happens that for me, when I think of trauma in my own life, it's being, well, there's different kinds of trauma. There's the long-term trauma, which is chronic trauma. And that's trauma that happens over time. And unfortunately, with that type of trauma, people who are in it almost feel like that's how life is, that this is all normal. And so they develop dysfunctional behaviors and coping mechanisms to deal with it, but they believe it's normal until they get help. And then, of course, there's the acute trauma. That's that thing that happens right away. That it may be an accident, or you find out your spouse has been cheating, or something that just completely just throws you out of your zone. And then there's the blend of the two, where you can have, a lot of times, people who have the chronic trauma. I always say trauma breeds drama, and drama breeds trauma. And they have unhealthy coping mechanisms, and it just seems to perpetuate the cycle of trauma, both acute and chronic, because they haven't learned to cope with it in a healthy manner.
Thank you, Mary Beth, for that. That's really important because trauma is a really big word. And so some people might think, oh, well, then that means you're dealing with clients who, have survived a war zone. Or
Right.
no, it could be someone who survived a car accident. Trauma spectrum. And thank you for saying that, because it can deal with what all of us see all the time with everyday people every day.
And one of the things, that's important with trauma, especially when it's an acute trauma, well, actually, no, chronic too, because our bodies become conditioned like Pavlov's dogs. So we go through this trauma, we have all this anxiety or shock, and our body has a hard time shaking off. And so there's, we need to be able to nurture our body and get that back for both types. Chronic trauma, they might have had it so long that they're just used to anxiety, and so it's, again, it's you got to hit it from every direction, but you have to come at it as, a lot of times people view trauma as this big monster that comes over you, and it can be when we have it, and it's acute or in abusive situations or anything. But I want to see people, I empower my clients for them. I'm teaching you trauma. You're not teaching me. I'm affecting you. So I want, by teaching you to dance, then how am I going to use this as a stepping stone? How am I going to use this trauma as my superpower? instead of letting that trauma be the superpower over me. Shaking it off as an identity.
Empowerment. That's what it sounds like to
Yes.
me. And Mary
Yeah.
Beth, it sounds very interesting. If you guys are interested in doing this, that'll be on Thursday, right before the IACT IMDHA conference. I'm looking forward to that, Mary Beth. That sounds really interesting, really
Oh,
intriguing.
good. Thank you.
Great. All right. Well, we're actually 1 minute away. I'm wondering if I can find a 1 minute question. But people are going to walk out of your program able to do something and apply it to their work right away after the conference. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. And I'll mention two quick things on the questions is, one of the things is getting people out of the mindset as hypnotherapists, getting them out of the trauma mindset. We talked about as an identity. And then the other thing is to, I working with people and therapists to release ourselves as therapists and clients from the sick model to the empowerment model.
Nice. Great. All right. Well, so I want to thank you for being here, everybody. If you're interested in Mary Beth's class, be sure and let the folks at the IACT IMDHA know about it so that you can get yourself signed up. We're looking forward to seeing all of you here in Orlando in just one of these dates again. Oh my gosh, the 16th of May is the weekend, 16th to the 18th, and again, this program is on Thursday before the weekend, and it's going to be a lovely thing. So everybody, be there, be there. We're
And
sending out
let
the
me ask one more
times.
quick question of Mary Beth. If we can't make it to the class, how can we learn more from you? Thank you, Patty Scott, very much.
Oh, okay. Well, my website is energymodelchange.com. And again, I'm available if somebody wants to talk, if someone wants to do a Zoom meeting. I promise I'll unplug my microphone beforehand. But
But you made it up in great time. Thank you. You
oh,
kept
good.
it brief and succinct, and it was wonderful. Thank you, Mary Beth. I look forward to meeting you at the conference.
Thank you.
Lovely job. So now, one more thing that I just might mention to everyone is we're going to be back here a week from now, and the lovely Patricia Scott and her partner in crime, Eric Rosen, are going to be one of the presentations on medical hypnotherapy, and the other will be Will Horton, who's going to talk on rapid addiction solutions masterclass. So we hope you'll come back and see us again in a week. And gosh, and in a week and a day is the virtual chapter once again. And Karen mentioned it earlier, and we'll tell you all about it again next time too. So look forward to seeing you in another week, and have a great time, everyone. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.